long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, it is a period of punching Nazis. Yes, it's also a time of treasure hunting and romance on a high adventure, but mostly it's for punching Nazis. And it's an achievement of filmmaking and storytelling brought to life by some of the most gifted and influential filmmakers of all time, but I cannot stress enough how much the biggest takeaway from Raiders of the Lost Ark should be the importance of punching Nazis. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. The views expressed therein are solely those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of their employers. Now let's go punch some Nazis. Hello there, and welcome back to 6 Degrees of Star Wars, the podcast where we explore all the ways George Lucas's flagship franchise surrounds us, binds us, and penetrates us in the landscape of cinema. I'm your host, Sam Marchioni. Joining me today, River Lane.
Here to talk about Henry Jones Jr.'s Slut Sona and his mostly beleaguered fictional TA.
And a couple first-time friends. Please welcome Bex.
Hello, I am here as a stan of the monkey being a sextuple agent and the monkey alone.
And Jordan.
Hello, I am an English literature student who does not know how to consume anything at a casual level.
We are here to talk about the first installment of the Indiana Jones franchise, Raiders of the Lost Ark, a degree one because it is a Lucasfilm project and probably the second thing you think of when you think George Lucas. The first being Star Wars.
Or Harrison Ford.
Oh, Harrison Ford. I
mean, everything about this movie is just copy-pasted onto Empire. If we are completely honest, they basically took everyone from this crew and said, no one's doing anything next week? Good. Get to wherever the fuck they filmed Hoth.
Now, I might admit, I am not the most knowledgeable about the wars in the stars, but from what I know about this movie is that the screenwriter impressed Lucas so much that he was like, hey, can you take a look at this Empire draft I have? And that's how that movie became the thing.
I know Lawrence Kasdan more for Return of the Jedi than I do for Empire Strikes Back, but...
I'm gonna be honest, Sam, I don't remember which one is 4 and which one is 5. I mean, which one is 5 and which one is 6.
5 is Empire, 6 is Return of the Jedi.
Well, you have to understand, Sam, is that I grew up with a Phantom Menace pinball machine. The prequels in my house were the thing.
I wish I could have grown up in your house. But yeah, we are here to talk about a different phase of George Lucas's nostalgia. If Star Wars is his Flash Gordon nostalgia mixed with his Akira Kurosawa fanboying, this is him loving 1930s adventure comics with all that implies. Dear God, the racism in this movie.
Also the sexism and misogyny, because, like, Marion is barely
Marion
a
is a can of worms. We gotta get there. I did not realize I had so many complicated feelings about Marion Ravenwood until I watched this movie for this specifically, and then I was like, oh, I have so many feelings about Marion Ravenwood.
Is it bad that she's actually one of the... I did see it. Technically, she has a higher body count statistic than Indy in this film.
Correct.
Yeah, that seems to be George's method of feminism in general, is that he can lean into all the tropes of the Fey Ray damsel in distress, just as long as you put a gun in her hands and let her kill/punch some people.
Not to be a sapphic on Maine, but it sure as fuck works for me.
Also, Marion deserved to hit and kill pretty much everybody in this movie, so, like, you know, I'm here for that.
This movie has what I like to call excellent framing, but we will get into it.
Listeners, on the off chance none of you have seen Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark, this is the one where an archaeology professor from a college in Illinois is tapped by the US government to go and find the Ark of the Covenant from the Exodus story and stop the Nazis from bringing it to Hitler.
Well, when you say it like that, Sam, it sounds crazy.
Also, I would like to heavily emphasize that professor is in quotes because this man does not teach.
He famously doesn't teach. My favorite scene in The Last Crusade is when you actually get to see him hold office hours and everyone is like swarming his door. And his poor assistant is like, you have so many kids who need to see you. And he just sneaks out the window. It's iconic.
Cream.
If anybody has the chance and you haven't read it yet, look up McSweeney's Dr. Henry Jones Denied Tenure.
I have not heard of this.
I will share it afterwards, but it's basically going through all the archaeological no-nos that Indiana Jones does throughout all three of the original three movies. Because we're not even touching Crystal Skull, and Dial of Destiny hadn't been made when that article was originally written.
I mean, the thing about, like, you know, the thing about specifically archaeology, especially in the corners of the universe that Indiana Jones is doing archaeology in, is that you do get the colonialism argument. And the, like, you know, everything belongs in a museum, but, like, in the right museum, so to speak, and the Western extraction of these people's artifacts and whatever. But this movie, and, like, this trilogy specifically, does an excellent job with framing, in that the other options are the Nazis. And we generally should not like Nazis. And we want to keep anything they want from their grubby little hands as much as possible.
Indeed. Life is short. Punch a Nazi.
Life is short, punch Nazi. So, like, yeah, taking the Ark of the Covenant out of Egypt is probably bad from a, like, a real-world archaeological and, like, museum standards and practices consideration. But when your other option is handing it over to the Nazis, I think I'm going to be okay with letting an American white man run around and punch the shit out of people for an hour and 55 minutes.
So was this anyone here's first time? So for me, the Indiana Jones movies, one of my first memories on this earth is toddling into the living room where my brother, who's 2 years older than me, and my dad were watching Temple of Doom and seeing the heart-ripping scene.
Oh,
screaming
God.
And running away, hiding under a desk. So naturally, these are some of my family's favorite films. We stop and watch Last Crusade through its completion whenever it's on, when we find it on any cable channels, rest in peace cable. And I remember Crystal Skull was a film very important to me that I saw in theaters and lost a tooth afterwards out of excitement. So, and then Dial of Destiny, my dad stayed awake for the whole movie, and that's historical. That's how much my family loves Indiana Jones. We are Last Crusade stans. We watch Last Crusade all the time because it's objectively the best one. But Raiders is good too.
This was not my first time watching Raiders, but it is only my second time watching Raiders. And Raiders remains the only Indiana Jones movie I have ever seen. I will say, if I had watched this movie in my childhood, it would have been a formative experience for my bisexual ass.
I am inventing time travel, if only to make out with young Harrison Ford. I think it's my God-given right.
Jordan, did you at least have The Mummy?
I've never seen The Mummy.
I've also never seen The Mummy.
Oh.
Congrats on being today's lucky 10,000. Your job, should you choose to accept it after this recording, is to go watch Mummy 1999. The good Mummy, Callie.
Call out.
Whatever bisexual energy Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark gives you, The Mummy 1999 is that, but even more.
So I have heard.
The Mummy is Raiders of the Lost Ark if it had been made by somebody who understood what queer was. Not that I believe anyone on the production was actually queer.
Is it less racist?
No.
No. It also has the problem of, that is definitely a white person playing a Middle Eastern person. God damn it, John Rhys Davies.
We go through the movie plot-wise, but John Rhys Davies' character is so good.
Yeah,
He's so good throughout the series.
Yeah. Yeah, like, okay, so my experience with Raiders is, fun fact about Raiders of the Lost Ark, it was released on my birthday in 1981.
You weren't alive.
Yeah, but, like, it was released on June 12th, which is my birthday now. So it is somehow, I suspect, intrinsically tied with my entire being as a person, TMCR. But far more importantly, this is background radiation movie. This movie has been background radiation in my life, my entire life. I've probably seen it in fragments all of my life. One of my pressing memories is I want to say junior year of high school. My theater teacher, for complicated lore reasons, TM. It was the end of the year. We were like, we've done all we could. Let's watch something. And my teacher pulled up the streaming service of choice and said, we're just going to watch Raiders of the Lost Ark. Don't tell your parents. So we watched Raiders of the Lost Ark in class.
See, Raiders isn't the one I consider the don't tell your parents movie. That goes to Temple of Doom.
No, it fully is. But, Raiders is the type of movie where, even it has PG on a technicality. And it was end of year, so nothing fucking matters anyway. But then my senior year in college, not my senior year, my freshman year of college, I remember having a day that was so crappy and so shitty that I was like, I need to feel something. So I found Raiders of the Lost Ark and I put it on, and I think that immediately tied this movie into my soul in inextricable ways. Because this movie, to me, is a catharsis movie. It is I need to feel something. I need to beat the shit out of someone. I will watch Raiders of the Lost Ark. It is the only one I have seen in theaters because TIFF did a specialty screening a year or so ago. About a year ago. Where they showed it in one of their little theaters, and I said, $10 sold. I am watching Raiders of the Lost Ark in theaters, which was fantastic. It was a great experience. But yeah, it is a movie that I am fairly convinced is tied up in my goddamn soul. I do immediately, basically, pretty much almost every time I watch these movies, I watch the first one day, and then a day or so later, I inevitably watch the other two. And my thoughts on the other two are Last Crusade is great because it's about taking the boy squad on an adventure, and Temple of Doom has its moments, and most of those moments are Steven Spielberg realizing he has in his prime Harrison Ford on his hands and saying, I'm going to make that man as slutty as possible by the end of this movie.
And he did. He
did. And also, we need to recognize about Temple of Doom that the bad thing about Temple of Doom, yes, is the racism, but it's not Short Round. Short Round was never the problem, y'all. We need to go after the real enemy, which is Willie Scott. Fuck Willie Scott. All my homies hate Willie Scott.
All my homies hate Willie Scott, and I'm so glad that movie takes place chronologically before Raiders.
Correct, yeah. But yeah, I probably could have done this movie cold if I had really, really needed to, or had really wanted to, but I did end up rewatching it, and basically my first note is, could I have done this movie cold? Probably, but why would I deny myself the pleasure of watching this movie again? So, I'm excited.
Yeah, I almost ended up doing this movie cold, but then I sat and thought about it, and I'm like, wait, when was the last time I watched this movie? Because I couldn't remember. The last time I really remembered doing anything with this movie was in 2016 when I went to a college that had a fall break as well as a spring break, and in October 2016 I went down to Florida to Disney Hollywood Studios. It will always be MGM to me, but I went to the Indiana Jones Stunt Spectacular because I was finally old enough. I volunteered to be part of the crowd in the market scene, and one of the people who was calling on people saw my hand shoot up. I was in the very front. He's like, okay, I think this girl might hurt me if I don't pick her.
I mean, shout out to the Indiana Jones Stunt Spectacular, because it is one of my favorite things about Hollywood studios. It and the old car stunt show they did on the backlot before the backlot became Batuu. Stunt show,
the French lights, motors, action thing.
Yeah, that one was so fascinating. I literally cannot watch a car chase now without thinking about the mechanics of how they did it. And anytime there's a backwards driving car, I'm like, oh yeah, there's a guy in the back seat driving backwards with a steering wheel.
Yeah. So the Stunt Spectacular is great, and also just the stunts in this movie are phenomenal, and especially the opening sequence that everybody knows with the boulder run and the idol swap that everybody parodies. That is a cinematic masterclass of how to do an opening scene, because there's barely any dialogue, but you get so much out of the character, and also it has a young Alfred Molina who is definitely painted up and should not be, and it upsets me. but also, hi, Alfred Molina. I do still have very fond memories of you.
If I may jump on that, the thing that I noticed, I was also like, maybe I'll do this cold, but I also was like, wait, when's the last time I saw Raiders? Because I see the other one all the time. Other two all the time. Ugh, Temple of Doom. But the thing I realized, I was like, oh, we don't see Indy's face for a while.
No,
this
it is. You
opening.
get piece parts.
Which means all I could focus on was the brown face during the opening.
Yeah.
And I was like, just show me Harrison so I can disassociate.
My thing about the opening, first of all, the font choice for the opening credits is incredible. I love the font choice for the opening credits. The other thing is Indy's costume, like his pure adventuring costume, is perhaps one of the greatest costumes in all of cinema because it is so easy and is so simple and it is quintessential, like, raid your dad's closet and you could put it together. Like, quite literally, I'm fairly certain if I went into my father's closet right now, I could, like, slap it together in maybe a day, give or take a trip to the thrift shop. But it is a classic costume. You can pull it together with old clothes. It is so, so good. You will never look as good in it as Harrison Ford does, but that's not the point. But yeah, it's such a great sequence because it's entirely it is almost entirely dialogueless until you get to the actual, like, temple run. And the thing about, like, the temple run specifically is it's such a good showcase of what we are going to come to learn about Indiana Jones in the coming sequence. Indy is clever as all get out, but he is also, like, very smart. And those are two separate qualities. Like, I would argue that, like, to use Mummy as a reference point, Rick is clever but not always smart, while Evie is smart but not always clever. Like, she does have her clever moments, but, like, I would not use clever as my first three adjectives to describe Evie. Indy is incredibly clever, occasionally a bit of a dumbass, but, like, that's the other thing I really like about Indy is what I keep calling him a cool dweeb to myself. Because, like, he has
never called Harrison Ford a dweeb.
Yeah, but, like, Indiana Jones is a dweeb. Like, Indiana Jones is a cool dweeb the same way that Andrew Garfield's Peter Parker is a cool dweeb. Like, in the sense that, like, you were trying to make this very conventionally attractive-looking man a nerd, and you're expecting me to believe... Like this movie does play, and because, like, this movie went through multiple drafts, and they did want the womanizer angle to be more of a prescient thing in earlier drafts.
Oh, God, the student with "love you" written on her eyelids.
Yeah. That was iconic. I'm sorry. I think that's hilarious. That's one of my favorite jokes in the movie.
I mean, it's funny until you remember Marion.
Yeah, well, again, put a lid on it. We got a couple of soapboxes about that. But for the sake of, like, you know, like, the earlier drafts of it, it was going to be more pronounced. Like, the reason that Indy is in, like, a wife beater and a robe when you meet him when Marcus meets him at his place is originally there was a version of that scene where he was with a woman and you were supposed to see her before the transition to the next scene leaving, and they dropped because I think, like, Spielberg didn't like the womanizing angle and thought it was too cliche. And there was another version of him where he was more of an alcoholic, which you can still see where he, like, mourns Marion's death. And, like, this movie has a lot of, like, fragments to sketch out a picture of who Indiana Jones is, but they left a lot of it on the cutting room floor. And so you get this character who has, like, 60% of the trappings of, like, that classic, you know, 30s style. Like, we must come to the terms with, like, Indiana Jones as a character could be way fucking worse. Like, yes, he's a bit of an asshole and a bit of a dickhead, and he is like, textually speaking, Indiana Jones is the worst. But he is carried by Harrison Ford's charisma, which is why I understand why Harrison is so protective over Indiana Jones. Though Troy Baker does do a damn good job.
I wanted to say about that beginning especially, like, I do really love the in media res of it all. Like, I think that's so important because, you know, how do you explain Indiana Jones? And you can't just do exposition. You have to show him in action because, yeah, textually, he fucking sucks. Like, I have so many bones to pick after rewatching this movie, and he is 100% carried by the fact that he's played by Harrison Ford, who is attractive and charismatic as all get out.
This poor carpenter just wants to build shelves and be left alone, but unfortunately for him.
Yeah.
Can I defend my piece of shit man for a second?
No,
Go ahead.
The
Yes.
thing that gets Indiana, and this especially comes across, again, not to Last Crusade, but especially in some of the other movies, he's compassionate to a fault that is almost his doom. Like, in the Temple Run, he fully puts his trust in brown-faced Alfred Molina, and it backfires on him. And then likewise, like, by the third movie, he's willing to go to bat for, like, a sexy woman that also happens to be a Nazi, guys. Like, he is...
like, again, the real enemy of Temple of Doom is not Short Round, because Short Round is...
If we talk about Temple of Doom now, there's going to be nothing for the Temple of Doom episode.
Okay, fair enough.
So then, my point, Indiana is compassionate to a fault. He
wants to believe in humanity, which is why Belloc is such a great villain for him.
Yes, exactly.
Belloc will throw anyone aside if it means because again, that's I think the most understated thing about this movie. Belloc is French. Belloc is, like, nationality speaking, that man is French. The Nazis at this point, like, I'd have to look at my history and look at the timelines real quick, but I believe France is occupied by this point.
It was 36.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so France is occupied by this point. The fact, because, like, I almost wrote a note about it, like, Belloc, why are you sympathizing with the Nazis? And then I remembered, like, oh, he's a white man, like, he's a rich white man, of course he's sympathizing with the Nazis. But, like, you know, that's, like, the shortest version of what the different, like, he calls it himself, he says he's a shadowy reflection of of Indy.
That, like, codified, we're not so different, you and I.
Oh, fully. Like, if it hadn't beforehand, it did then.
The
But
amount
also,
of things this movie codified, like, I completely forgot that Top Men is from this movie. There's so much. Why don't you just shoot him is from this movie.
well,
So
yeah.
much is baked into this movie.
Yeah, and also, the other thing that endears us to Indy is Indiana Jones is so frequently looking like an idiot. Like, the classic cool guy, you know, the heroes of old move is when he uses the vine to swing across the gap when the whip, you know, when he's Sans whip in that Temple Run scene. The classic cool guy thing would to have him be, like, the Bond thing would be to have him pop over the other side still standing and, like, you know, walk it off like nothing's going wrong. Instead, Spielberg has him crash into the cliff and, like, barely hanging on and not able to get a foothold. And, you know, Harrison's pulling, like, so many faces of, like, oh shit, oh fuck. And in doing so, like, you know, there are a couple of moments in this movie where Indy, like, the resigned sigh when the muscle guy after in the chase to catch up to the caravan that's going to Cairo, the resigned sigh when the muscle guy is like, square up, motherfucker, and he's like, seriously, we gotta do this? Are we really gotta do this?
Yeah, give me a second to get my stunt double.
Yeah, he just sort of slumps and slides his way off the plane and, like, reluctantly squares up. Like, that's the thing, is that, like, the two biggest things is his compassion and the fact that, like, the movie is not afraid to let him look like a dumbass.
I think that what's really fun for me is that, like, he's an archaeologist, and that's what he wants to be doing. He doesn't want to be doing all of this extra bullshit that he is caught up in. And so he's just so tired that he's not able to just, like, go excavate the thing, and that he has to deal with all of these other pieces to it.
It's about the goddamn Nazis ruining everything.
It's literally, he's not a fighter, he's a scholar.
It's a lot of Harrison. It is a lot of smart directing choices by Spielberg, but it is a lot of Harrison. Also, that theme. The Raiders March is the most perfect theme to ever theme. Shout out to John Williams for fucking real.
That is an amazing, iconic theme. But the theme I forgot about that I loved so much was the love theme between Indy and Marion that popped up. I meant to listen to it back to back, but I was going to see if he was doing the same thing he did with the Raiders March versus the Superman theme, which, by the way, if you've never tried that, hum John Williams' Superman theme and then try to hum the Raiders theme. You can't quite do it because they're basically the same.
And then you go
Okay, apparently Sam can do it.
Sam can do it, but Sam's a goddamn nerd. Affectionately.
Listen, Jazz has broken out into song several times on my podcast. I should get to break out into song on my podcast.
No, understandable. But no, what I was going to do is I was going to listen to see if Scoundrel and the Princess or Han and Leia's love theme was similar or same to Marion and Indy's, and then I just ran out of time.
Yeah, I did get that vibe too, and that's honestly, it took up till the prequels for George to really move out of belligerent sexual tension, my beloved.
Listen, okay, I got so many. We gotta so many thoughts and feelings about that.
All right, the table is officially open for discussions regarding the character of Marion Ravenwood. The chair recognizes Jordan as the first to submit their petitions.
So, I want to start with the fact that, like, I'm a bisexual woman. I am so in love with Marion. However, the writing of this movie, she's barely a character, and it bothers me so much. And, like, what gets me sometimes is that Belloc was treating her better at times than Indy was. Like, he seemed to be actually listening to her, whereas Indy just was like, "Nah, silly woman." So that was wild to me as I was sitting there, and I'm just like, why is this happening? And I think that, like, you know, it does a good job at building the characters with that same, like, two sides of the same coin thing that's going on with Belloc and Indy. And so it's like, out of all of these things that Belloc is, you know, archaeology above all, this is his religion, like, he actually seemed to hear Marion in that, like, tent scene in a way that Indy never seemed to actually hear her. But, like, at the same time, there's a lot of history between Indy and Marion that they really only scratch the surface of in Raiders. And so, like, it's all just very muddled, especially because, like, Marion's writing is just not very good. She keeps getting shuffled off screen for half the time. Indy just keeps basically being like, "You have to trust me," and doesn't explain anything, and there's just a whole lot going on where she just kind of exists, and these things are happening around her, which really sucks, because I feel like if she had been allowed to have actual agency, she would have been a really good piece of the puzzle, but she was mostly there to look pretty and kiss Indy.
If I may, my Marion thoughts. The tendency, first of all, I do disagree that I think they both, Indy and Belloc, both kind of saw her as a prize to be won. Belloc was literally creepily perving on her in the tent scene, but at least he fed her. But if I may, the thing with Marion is that I would agree that she's underwritten, but not to the extent that thankfully not to the extent that Willie is underwritten. I would say she has maybe not agency in the story, but she has a personality. That's fun. I really, really like her intro scene, because I feel like it kind of tells us a lot of what we need to know about her. That she's crafty, that she can handle her shit, and then it falls apart when you get the line, "I was a child," and Indy's like, "You knew what you were doing," which
she was 15.
She
the script said that she's 25 when he shows up in that bar scene. So if it was 10 years, we can do math.
George Lucas wanted her to be 11.
Oh, God.
Which is why I think that, like, Lawrence cast into the smart thing and left that specific detail out of the dialogue, because if you're like me and you don't necessarily read every inch and crevice of a thing, and also don't know actors' ages because you gave up knowing actors' ages for Lent, knowing actors' ages is a slippery slope to knowing everything about them, and I gave that up for Lent.
When I found out Andrew Garfield's like in his 40s, I was like, dang.
Yeah, shout out to that hair transplant for real. But my thoughts about Marion can be summed up with two things. One, rip to Marion, you deserved female writers. Because I think a lot of our hiccups and a lot of our problems could have just been solved if she had female writers.
Yeah.
If someone with a woman's touch had gone over her and kept her agency in mind when writing.
We needed Carrie.
Yeah, if Carrie had been able to punch shit up, but yeah. My other thing is about that intro scene is it is fantastic. It is a great introduction to who we need to know about Marion. And I think that's what this is the thing that has hung me up the most about Marion, because I have done basically the spectrum of everyone's thoughts about Marion over the course of every time I've watched this movie. I come out with a different opinion about Marion. But my thing about Marion Ravenwood is she is so goddamn cool in that intro. I, as a non-binary bisexual, am so in love with Marion in that opening scene. That is, it is a quintessential, cool girl TM intro. It is very clearly, what the writers think a cool girl does. And then she is never allowed to really be that cool ever again, except in the tent scene. And the reason for that is because that tent scene was mostly ad-libbed by the actor who played Belloc and the actress who played Marion, because there was no reason in the script for Marion to show up at the Well of Souls in a dress. And they're like, oh shit, we should probably justify that somewhere. And so the two of them came up with the tent scene. And it was Karen's idea, who's the actress who plays Marion, Karen Allen. It was her idea to do a callback to the drinking contest from her bar scene. Which is, further proof that, if Marion had had female writers, someone would have kept track of her motivations.
Also, just her climbing all over Indy and shrieking about the snakes.
I mean, both of them hate snakes. If that's just, a thing they bond over, I think that's cute, actually.
Yeah, also,
it could be cute, but it's just, no other scene really lives up to her badassery in the bar, because she's LOL, you don't get to win. You're maybe you get to bonk one person out with a frying pan, but then you climb into the basket and the monkey narcs on you and you're out of the movie for 20 minutes.
That's the thing, is that because I was rewatching the market sequence and I was mostly tracking Marion. And the movie doesn't want you to track Marion. But if you track Marion, first of all, her go-to fighting move is to whack somebody upside the head as hard as possible until they stop moving, which icon and star. She does that to at least two people. Number two, her hiding in the baskets is not a half bad idea. If she knows that Indy is realistically right after her, hide in the basket until the people run away, and she can pop out when Indy comes scrambling, because Indy's gonna call out for her. She can jump out.
Fucking monkey.
The monkey narking on her is the only flaw in her plan, because she didn't expect the monkey to fucking narc on her, because nobody expects the monkey to fucking narc on you.
Yeah, also, especially because that monkey was all over her.
And that's the other thing, is that, her calling out for Indy is, yes, a shrieking damsel move, but it is also, a halfway clever way of making sure that Indy can track where she is. And yeah, cutting her out of the movie because Indy thinks she's dead is a man-pain motivator like there is no other. But if we want to pretend and live in a world where we trust the female characters to have some internal thought processes and motivation, tracking Marion in that way and trying to be okay, what could theoretically be running through her head other than she's written by men and she is being pinned in a damsel distressed role? What move? Every fight scene Marion is in, she is making choices, and the movie just won't let her win. Her move to jump into the cockpit to try and get the pilot out to, and then take control of the gun, that's a smart move. It's not her fault that the movie decides to lock the cockpit on her.
And Indy has to shoot her out of it.
Yeah, or the move to take the blocks from underneath the plane to whack the guy upside the head. That's a smart thought, because it's getting a weapon. She doesn't expecting the guy to have the engine running and have the guy hit the thing and have the plane start moving. That's the thing, is if we want to track Marion as a character with thoughts, feelings, emotions, and opinions outside of the doylistic writers writing a damsel in distress, Marion is making smart, clever fight choices. The movie just won't let her win.
Yeah, I think that is what is most frustrating, is that, Marion is I think, almost more interesting than Indy in this movie. And it's almost like the writers know it, and so they can't let her actually do anything.
She has the narrative agency, and she is prepared to carry the plot burden, because remember, the Ark of the Covenant is her father's obsession. Like, that's the reason Indy is in Nepal, is because he's looking for her father, and he just doesn't know that her father is dead, because her father, understandably, kicked his ass to the curb when he found out he was having an affair with his daughter. You know, the childness of it all, notwithstanding, like, the only thing, like, I don't remember if it was Indy or Marion who said the only thing that could have come between Indy and Abner was her, and I think it's Indy.
It was definitely Indy.
Like, Karen Allen pointed this out in some interview where she's, like, a little upset that the fact that, like, Marion's motivation got boiled down to following Indy and getting her money back because Indy paid her for the amulet, and then all of her money went up in smoke when the Nazis showed up. But, like, if someone had been tracking her character motivations, they would have realized that it's her father's obsession, and she might have picked up a few things.
And, I mean, what I really do like, though, about when she decides, like, she's sticking with Indy, she says, "I'm your partner now." But then the movie doesn't let her actually be his partner. She's his tag-along that he has to deal with.
Right, because that job already went to John Rhys Davies and Brownface.
Which, I do love Sala. I'm still sad about John Rhys Davies and Brownface, but Sala's so good.
We're so caught up in the euphoria of, like, a decent male character who's, like, a good man that we forget that John Rhys Davies is not Egyptian.
Tis a tragedy.
The other thing I want to talk about the bar scene. My favorite thing about the bar scene is the thing that I want to shout out the most in this movie. This movie's use of shadows is spectacular.
Oh, yeah, the shadows are great.
In the pre-Temple Run sequence, the way that we are able to, like, not look at Indy is mostly because Indy is shrouded in shadow. And then in the bar, everyone gets introduced on the shadows on the wall. And like, the final shot when Indy leaves the bar and, like, you just see Harrison's eyes, the eyes that are bluer than the Pacific.
Okay.
Listen, Bex. I was not on any of the OG trilogy episodes. You all need to really understand that, like, I am inventing time travel solely to make out with an in his prime Harrison Ford. I'm with Carrie Fisher on this one.
I don't even know if Carrie Fisher's with Carrie Fisher on that one.
Put a pin in it.
Princess Diarist exists, and she admits that she made out with Harrison Ford, or was having an affair with Harrison Ford at the time, and
Oh, right, and Mark was too
stupid to realize, or too oblivious to realize. Yeah, no.
Yeah,
Shout out to the Princess Diarist, the only thing that has ever made me sob openly, or nearly sob openly in a bookstore.
I want to put a pin in that, and I want to briefly touch on the MacGuffin du jour, the amulet that has the markings on both sides, but the Nazis only got one side because the creepy guy in the black only got burned on one side.
That man is such a great minion villain.
He really is, but here's the thing, this was the first time I actually was paying attention to the whole 7 Kadam thing, and based on the math that they give, like, Indy's staff should be 5 feet tall if they are taking off 1 Kadam out of 6, but that would imply Harrison Ford is shorter than 5 feet when we actually get to the map room and he's holding the staff. So I think, like, somebody just
Someone did a goof.
Someone did a goof and a gaff.
Maybe. I don't know. Like, when I was paying attention this time around, there was a lot of me playing, okay, what's Harrison Ford and what's a stunt guy? And you can basically always tell by the positioning of the hat. Like, if it's down in his face, they are trying to hide it.
The hat was specifically purchased and designed that way. The monkey as an informant is a very funny choice, you kind of have to admit. Also, getting the monkey to see Kyle is also very...
That was insane. That was maybe one of the most insane bits. I couldn't believe my eyes seeing that. I was like, what do you mean?
Yeah,
what do you mean, Nazi monkey?
What do you mean, Nazi monkey? That's, like, that sentence alone is so absurd.
I'm still so sad about the monkey because, like, it was all lovey on Marion, and so, like, I felt like I was personally betrayed when the monkey was a double agent.
So Jordan,
but the monkey got what it deserved.
So Jordan, what I'm discovering over the course of this podcast, and this is, like, I think our second conversation with each other, is the opposing ends of the bisexual spectrum. You want good things for Marion, and I want good things for Indy.
But
So-
what about the monkey, people?
No good things for the monkey. A Nazi is a Nazi, even if the Nazi is a monkey.
Agreed.
Agreed.
To quote
Like,
Tony,
it's sad,
Gold-
but
to quote Tony Goldmark, it's not that they just had a monkey. It's that they didn't overuse the monkey.
The monkey was carefully used.
The monkey was indeed carefully used. And he died for indie sins.
Bad dates indeed.
Bad dates indeed. This movie moves at a clip. Like, because I had to briefly pause it to go swap laundry while I was watching it. I think I swapped it. I think I, like, paused it at, like, 40 minutes, at like, which is just after the market scene. This movie is an hour and 55, and it does not move like it. It moves like a much shorter movie, which is very impressive, considering that it is occasionally victim of action set piece, exposition, action set piece, exposition, but it, like, doesn't feel like that in the slightest.
Yeah, the whole last 45 minutes of the movie where we go car chase to, like, 5 minutes resting on the boat scene to what amounts to heist to best Nazi deaths in a movie ever.
God, the spectacular melting of the faces.
my notes literally say, face melting scene was certainly something.
I forgot. I was like, so the special effects in the arc scene, let's be real. I was like, okay, these don't hold up. And then the faces started melting, and I was like, oh, I'm wrong. They're the
That's
faces
because
hold
all the
up.
face melting, like, everything was practical to some extent.
That's sick.
Like, the spirits were dummies shot through water to get that sort of ethereal quality about them. And then the face melting is, like, again, it's like heat lamps, and then the exposure rate sped up, so you get the melting effect. And also, you were supposed to see more of Belloq's head exploding, and then the MPAA was going to give them an R, which is why Belloq's head exploding is shrouded by so much fire.
We should do that with everybody who does that level of cultural appropriation.
Just make their head
'Cause,
explode.
like, just,
Your head exploded.
like, I don't know what you fucking expected. Like, even one of the Nazis is like, I don't know about doing this Jewish ceremony. And Belloq's like, it's fine, I'll put on their cultural vestments, I'll speak in their religious language, I'll open one of their most sacred artifacts. What's gonna go wrong? Bitch, you thought.
I mean,
that's mostly because the Nazis are famously anti-Semitic.
that's what I was
know.
gonna. I mean, to be fair to Belloq, I'm pretty sure that wasn't the reason. I'm pretty sure the Nazi wasn't like, we can't do this. It's not appropriate. I'm pretty sure that's not why he was complaining. He was like, oh, those dirty Jews. I don't want to do their
No.
shit.
I know that's why the Nazi has the feelings about it. But, like, I don't know. It's still, like, it's still funny to me that Belloq had that level of hubris. So, it actually, I enjoy the fact that he does get that extra moment of the Nazis mocking him when he reaches in and there's nothing but sand in the arc.
Yeah, that's
Also,
pretty
Belloq
good.
confusingly looked kind of like a pope to me during that, and I was like, huh, that's not a... That, and...
But seriously, that scene fucked me up so much, I actually would squeeze my eyes shut.
Oh man, I don't think I watched that scene until I was, like, old enough to process it, and then I watched it and I'm like, no, watching Nazis get their faces melted off is the correct disposal of your Nazis, especially since, like, these Nazis especially fucking suck.
It worked so well that they basically did the same thing in the third movie.
Yeah,
The real reason Temple of Doom isn't as good as the others? No Nazis.
no Nazis.
Well, that's the funny thing about Spielberg. He had the Nazis as the enemies, and then he did Schindler's List, and he was like, well, I'm never gonna have a Those Wacky Nazis movie ever again after doing the movie I just did. But it is fun to see them get so thoroughly owned.
Especially
in
now
these
that we're in a
movies.
culture where the general common sentiment that we have had for decades of Nazis bad is no longer a common popular sentiment. I think we need to go back to those wacky goddamn Nazi villains again and watch more of them get punched in the fucking face.
Are you saying it's time
Yes.
to revive the producers?
Yes, it is the official position of this podcast. Nazis are bad.
Yeah.
And we should punch them.
Yes.
Stop calling it alt-right, punch a Nazi. I do also want to say, shout out to Ben Burt. Shout out to Ben Burt for real. Shout out for him recording the sound of a car backing down a gravel driveway for the sound of the boulder rolling, and shout out to him punching a bunch of leather jackets to get the punch sound for any time a fist connects with skin in this movie. Ben Burt's great.
God, I love audio people.
I love finding out what audio people did to make the sounds that they did, because they're never what you think they are, and I always find it so fascinating what they actually come up with.
And if he was also the one to pick that, thank you, Ben Burt, for including the Wilhelm scream.
Yes, I clocked it and I was so happy.
Literally, I took the notes, like, oh, there's the Wilhelm scream. The other great sound thing is in the plane fight sequence. The March's refusal to resolve completely until Indy gets the upper hand and actually starts, like, properly winning, and, like, more than, like, one win, is such a great musical choice. John Williams, you mad bastard.
And that kill, though, death by plane propeller.
That was so good. And I love the way that Indy actually can tell what is about to happen, and so he's like, if I just kind of, oh fuck, then this guy isn't going to realize what is about to hit him.
It's a little bit Looney Tunes. Like, the way the guy turns around and goes, uh-oh.
This movie gets so shockingly Looney Tunes at times, it's hysterical. Like, going back to the opening sequence.
The entire boulder sequence is a Looney Tunes short.
Yeah. And especially the guy running the plane, he's like, he's like, start that. And he's like, I want to finish fishing, man.
My notes for the opening sequence literally has, man, lucky protagonist movie magic, because it is so, like, cartoon logic, cartoon physics kind of thing, but it's so good. Like, it works for this movie.
I feel like watching a few episodes of DuckTales after this. Does anybody else feel like watching some DuckTales?
That feels incredibly valid. But, like, the other thing is, like, Indy, when Marion is like, what are you gonna do when you, like, catch up to the caravan that's trying to head to Cairo? And he's like, I don't know, I'll make it up as I go along. That is another thing where it's, like, the difference between intelligent and clever. Like, Indy is, like, we've established so much safety and cred with him that I fully believe that Indy is clever enough to make use of cartoon physics.
That's also just pure Han Solo popping out for a second there. All that was missing was a sweetheart.
I wrote a Tumblr post years ago that said all of Harrison Ford's characters have one brain cell, and someone commented underneath it, and sometimes the one you're watching isn't in custody of the brain cell. And I think that is so correct. And someone also, I think, commented, like, Han gets it the least and Jack Ryan gets it the most. Indy's doesn't quite operate on the has to hit the corner of the screen to have a thought. He just has one, and he knows how to use it. He just sometimes chooses not to because it's funny. For the bit of it all.
You're not disproving the Looney Tunes theory.
No, I was never going to disprove the Looney Tunes theory, because I think the Looney Tunes theory is fucking hilarious.
Another thing I forgot about Marion's terrible, horrible, no good, very bad day was going into that room full of skeletons. Like, no thank you. I forgot that scene, and I hated it.
Oh,
yeah, that was terrifying.
Fucks
actually.
From a practical level. It is bad for Marion, because I too want good things for Marion, and walking through a wall of skeletons and mummies is not good.
What with the snake coming out of its mouth? Like, ugh.
Yeah.
There are too many snakes in this movie.
I love every single one of them. There actually aren't as many snakes. There are also a lot of legless lizards. If you watch the Well of Soul scenes again, look for the ones that have ears.
Yeah, and a lot of them are rubber. It's still too many.
Yeah, so, like, I'm somebody who actually likes snakes. I have a corn snake, who is curled up downstairs. But snakes, when they're venomous, or when there's that many of them who will get agitated and bite you, yeah, I'm kind of with Indy on that, where it's like, please don't give me a snake.
The snakes, and also the spiders. The spiders...
Oh, the spiders freaked me out way fucking more. Because, like, with snakes, they kind of, like, they are, like, if you've never held a python, they do have a weird sensation of them, like, because you can feel them moving around, and it's a very weird sensation. You can feel, like, their muscles move. But spiders, there's just too many legs, man. Can I talk about the boat scene? Can I talk about it's not the years, it's the mileage?
Ooh.
The one moment where it is dangerously close to working, because, like, listen, again, if we are thinking about Marion from a character tracking perspective and pretending for a second that she is an independent being with thoughts, feelings and opinions of her own. You are just on a absolute wild road trip of hell with your ex-boyfriend who you have, like, resented since they broke up, because maybe you've done the thought processy of, like, that was probably not healthy. Maybe you haven't. Who's to say? But, like, you're now trapped in a tiny-ass room with said ex-boyfriend. Said ex-boyfriend looks like Harrison Ford in his prime. And is in pain. And you've gotten him shirtless, and wowee, he looks better than how you remembered him. And he's basically being like, you have this, like, this is the one moment where, like, Indy basically hands control over and says, you do what you want. He's protesting the whole way because
He's a fucking child.
Yeah, he's protesting because he's in pain and he's grumpy and he's whatever. But, like, Marion doesn't have to kiss him. It's Marion's choice to kiss him.
Yes.
And
Also, like, the hopeless romantic in me just loves that scene. Like, it's so cute. It's something that I reblog on Tumblr when I'm in a shippy mood. Like, I love it. It's adorable.
You've absolutely pictured that with Thor and Jane, haven't you?
Yes.
My favorite thing about that scene is that he straight falls asleep.
Yeah. And she's so annoyed about it too.
And I think that's the other thing that, like, sells the scene for me, is the fact that, like, the minute Marion wants to push it further, he knocks the fuck out.
Yep.
Because she can't win.
Yeah, I would be so annoyed. Like, she is so rightfully annoyed when he passes out, because she's just like, really? Like, I was finally in the mood. Like, I finally liked you for the first time this whole time. And now you're just passed out and I don't even get to have my fun?
Yeah, no, fully. And also, like, Marion, I get it. I get it. I am you and you are me in this one particular moment. The other moment in which Marion is a stronger woman than I am, never mind the fact that it is a Nazi uniform that he is in, but Indy without the hat, holding a rocket launcher pointed at Nazis.
Okay. Let's pull it together here, people. He is in a Nazi uniform.
It is a Nazi uniform, which docks it points. However, Indy Sans' hat, which he very rarely is in this first movie, levels it out again.
Can I confess my favorite Indiana Jones look?
What is
Okay.
It's him teaching, because that's when he looks the most like a lesbian.
I also love the blue suit on the plane. The blue suit on the plane is fucking fantastic.
Yes. I love the way he tips the fedora down to,
Yeah,
like,
eyes bluer than the Pacific. The colorists knew what they were about.
So why the fuck did they give Marion such an ugly outfit at the end of the movie?
I do not know, but I do love that she spends the entire market sequence running around in pants in 1930, which is sick as hell.
That outfit is sick as hell. That's my favorite outfit she wears in the film. Am I alone? Am I alone in that? Dang, alright. I thought I would have some outfit support.
It's her best outfit by default, because I fucking hate that white dress so much.
Yes.
I like the second white dress.
You mean the nightgown?
Yeah.
Thank God for when Indy, like, tears it to pieces, because, like, at least it is somewhat practical when it's shorter.
Yes. Practical.
Yes, there's heavy air quotes there, but...
Also, like, the fact that she also has the open-toed, high-heeled white shoes, like...
That was infuriating.
It was weird enough that Belloc brought a froofy dress out to the middle of the desert for her, but he also brought her those shoes. And I'm this close to climbing up on a soapbox and talking about how high heels are an instrument of the patriarchy to make it harder for women to run away, even though that's actually not why they were originally invented in the early Renaissance. But we're not here for a costume lecture. We're not here for fashion history.
Not on this movie. Maybe on one of the sequels.
The
But
fact
also,
that the first woman in this franchise that wears the most sensible thing for most of the movie is the Nazi.
We gotta save it for the Last Crusade. We gotta save it for the
No,
Last Crusade.
I can't wait for the Last Crusade for me to yell about
I also
Elsa.
cannot wait for the Last Crusade. But, like, the other great thing about this movie is, as much as I quibble, and as much as I bicker with it, and as much as I, like, you know, have complicated feelings about Marion, you get to the end of this movie and you're like, fuck everything. This movie whips ass.
Yeah, especially when oh my god, can we talk about the ghosts? Because that's the other thing. We touched on the face melting, but those like helpful. That lady ghost that pops out of the ark, I was like, who are these ghosts supposed to be? Are these the Hebrews?
That was my theory.
I have no idea. But the lasers, the melting of the faces, everything's on fire. The camera explodes.
The chain fire that passes from Nazi to Nazi.
Don't look upon the wrath of God of it all.
Yeah,
like,
that I think is my favorite bit. That Indiana Jones's answer was, close your eyes and it works.
Yeah.
I remember reading like a Katie-fied novelization, and Sodom and Gomorrah is specifically referenced as in this point of... Because he's thinking about Lot's wife turning into a pillar of salt. But honestly, my favorite part of that whole thing is at the end of the sequence when the pillar of fire pushes the lid of the ark back up into the sky, and it just, bink, lands neatly back on the ark.
Yeah, this movie does not beat its Looney Tunes ass allegations.
No. But it works for this movie. Like, I don't know why, but it works.
Because this movie is at its core a B movie. It is a 1930s serial with, like, classic blockbuster grade production value. And, like, that's intentional. Like, Spielberg never intended this to be, quote-unquote, like, high art TMCR. Like, he's like, no, this is no better than any, like, B-movie serial that we watch. It just happens to have, you know, the greatest filmmakers of a generation at the peak of their power.
And the greatest vaccines crew, one of the greatest musicians of all time. Yeah. This movie, man, that's the thing about Indiana Jones. On paper, you're right. He's terrible. It shouldn't work. On paper, so much of this film went through so many drafts. How did it even ever get cohesive? And yet you
come out of it and you're like, wait a minute, this movie whips ass.
This is the movie where Nicole Kidman comes out and goes, that's magic.
Yeah. No, that is
the
undescribable feeling we get when the lights begin to dim. It is Indiana Jones.
My very last note for this movie was, how do you just go back to normal after that?
You don't. Which is why there's another 1, 2, 3 movies following this one chronologically, because again, Temple of Doom was a prequel.
Well, so the other thing I really love about this movie is you get this, like, even if we lived in an alternate reality where this was the only movie that existed,
don't you dare say that.
The sole one that existed. This movie has a feeling that there is stuff on either side of it. Like, because we enter in media res, and, like, Belloc is already, like, when we meet Belloc, he's already established as, like, knowing Indiana Jones. And the audience is not expected to necessarily know who Belloc is. Or, like, maybe the audience is expected. But it's the same trick that George Lucas pulled with A New Hope, where he's like, oh, yes, your father and I served together during the Clone Wars. We, the audience, don't know what the Clone Wars is.
You guys aren't ready for that, but your kids are gonna love it.
Yeah, but this movie has the same energy of there is stuff that was before this movie, and there is stuff that is after this, and, like, this is just a lost episode that we caught along the way. Like, this movie handshake Buckaroo Banzai.
Interesting.
But because we do live in the universe where the other 3 movies and the TV show were made, we know what's on either side of this. And, like, yeah, that's good. I do prefer living in the universe where we have Temple of Doom and Last Crusade. Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is okay until Aliens, and I haven't seen Dial of Destiny. And I still
You haven't?
No, but if we had existed in the universe where this was the only movie, I like the idea that Indy is off to another adventure. Like, we don't go back to normal after this. Like, Indy does go off on another adventure. Maybe Marion comes with him, maybe Marion doesn't. And I like that. I think that's a good way of telling an adventure story, because the adventure story classically are a bunch of serialized little inserts and little little episodes. And Indy has less room to dig than those classic novels, because there is a bit more concrete information about when things happened, and it is not as extravagant, patently because Indy does not believe in the quote-unquote hocus-pocus of it all. Very funny. Every time, like, motherfucker, you will eventually meet aliens, and you still don't believe. Like, you watched a bunch of Nazis' faces get melted off, and you still
didn't. He explicitly did not watch their faces get melted.
But then he saw their skeletons afterwards. Like,
But for all he knows, they were turned into dust.
Yeah, or like, motherfucker, Temple of Doom takes place before this movie, chronologically. Motherfucker, you got brainwashed and watched a man's heart get ripped out of his chest and you don't believe in magic?
I forgot that technically he did get brainwashed in Temple of Doom.
There's a magic, there's a verve, there's an energy. Like, Spielberg if Spielberg capitalized, and Lucas and Kasdan all capitalized on this idea that, like, if this was the only one we get, we're going to pretend that our new intrepid hero is going off on a brand new adventure, and maybe we'll catch up with him, maybe we don't.
Yeah.
And I think that's the best thing that both Indy and Star Wars do, is the idea of, like, this one adventure is wrapped up, but maybe if you, like, asked us in a couple of years, we'll tell you a new one. And I think that's...
I really like that too, especially because, like, most of my TV background comes from procedurals, which is a whole other kettle of fish, but I really love when they end in a way where, you know, you can still have the characters going off and doing what it is that they do. We're just maybe not going to be seeing it.
Yeah, it's playing in the gutter space and playing in the dead zone. To borrow a phrasing from Critical Role, that was a nice story.
Let's do it again. The one last thing I'll say about this is it's also amazing to see Spielberg develop his style, because this is only 1981. So his big hits before this have been Jaws, Close Encounters, and that's kind of it. Like, tell me you remember this.
Working on E.T. at the same time, or
E.T. was 82, so yes, he was working on E.T. and he was tell me you remember the Sugarland Express. No, that was his theatrical film debut, and then Jaws, Close Encounter.
I mean, have you ever subjected yourself to American Graffiti?
That was
George Lucas. I hate it.
Well, we're not talking about him. Well, I mean, we are talking about him, but we're not talking about... Wait a minute. Okay, the funniest thing is he did The Color Purple and The Goonies in the same year.
Oh my god.
Spielberg fascinates me as a director in the sense of, like, the man has an oeuvre. He has a specific genre and vibe that he continues to go for, and a specific, like, angle he goes for. And I think that, like, everyone in the general populace has agreed that, like, even when he, like, maybe half strikes out, he doesn't completely strike out. Like, he's never gonna strike out completely, but he is gonna at least get to, like, maybe first base about an idea.
You're calling Ready Player One a first base movie?
Okay, hang on. Let's...
I would argue, if you held me at gunpoint and forced me to watch Ready Player One in its entirety from beginning to end, there are probably positive things I could say about Ready Player One. And sometimes you hit a foul ball, man. But you at least make contact. You make a hit.
Sure.
And I think that, like, that's the thing, is, like, it's saying, like, Spielberg, to some extent, handshake, like, you know, directors like M. Night Shyamalan, they're gonna take a swing. They're gonna, like, Shyamalan has a stronger case of not always making contact, but Spielberg takes swings and a solid 10 out of 10 times makes contact, whether or not it ends up, you know, fouling into right field or whatever. I'm getting way too elaborate on this baseball metaphor that I don't give an entire shit about. But, like, you get the idea. Like, Spielberg, like, yes, we are watching creatives in their prime, TMCR, whatever you want, however the fuck you want to define, like, prime, as it were, making absolutely fantastic art. But also, it's a B-movie serial that on paper has terrible characters who are terrible people, but, like, are carried by the charisma of their act. Movies are magic, man. Man.
Yeah. So my last thoughts for this movie is going back to Marion, because I love Marion. I really, like, you know, we've said, you know, she doesn't get a lot of agency unless you're specifically tracking her and trying to figure out what's going on in her head. But I do love that last scene with her and Indy at the end, where they're on the stairs of the building and he offers her his arm and she takes it. Like, that is, you know, he's making the offer and she's choosing to accept that offer. And, like, I was doing some reading on the IMDb trivia, and I know that she doesn't come back in the next one because Lucas wanted Indy to have a different love interest in every movie, which is dumb and whatever, but like
It's the Bond mentality.
Yes.
It's the Bond mentality. Well, that's because the thing is, like, George Lucas wanted to do a Bond movie, and he wanted to do a Bond-esque style movie, or Spielberg wanted to do a Bond-esque style movie, and then George said, "Hey, I got this adventure script hanging out." Also, fun fact, this movie was apparently mostly constructed while Spielberg and Lucas hid in Hawaii to avoid press about Star Wars coming out, because Lucas famously doesn't go to the premiere of his movies.
What?
So, yeah.
George Lucas hates being famous, but he loves making stuff that people like.
Yeah, so apparently he and Spielberg with their families went to Hawaii when Star Wars came out, waiting to see whether or not it was going to be a hit or if it was going to crash and burn. And when it turned out it was going to be a hit, Lucas like patently relaxed, and then they actually like started their vacation proper. And apparently the two of them were building a sandcastle while they ironed out the details of this movie. And I feel like that does have a summation of what this movie feels like. It does kind of feel like two best friends making a sandcastle.
Oh my god, I can picture them like making the little models of everything.
Yeah. Also, I want that matte painting. I want that last matte painting of the warehouse on my wall. Tell me what Etsy seller I need to bribe to get that matte painting.
That is actually so cute. They were just it was like they were like boys building a sandcastle together, and that's what this film, for better and for worse, feels like.
So it has that energy, but is the Force with it?
Yes. God, yes. If only for punching Nazis and Harrison Ford in his prime, this movie has the Force with it, for Christ above.
For better or worse, I am 100% the Force is with it. Like, I have my problems with it, but it's entertaining, it's good, and I'm in love with Marion Ravenwood, so.
At the very least, the Force is with that monkey.
The Force is not with the monkey is a Sith!
The monkey is now one with the Force.
If the Force had been with the monkey wouldn't have died.
Guys, I'm gonna be real. I don't understand the Force, and at this point, I'm too scared to ask.
Okay, well, you know what? I'll make it unanimous. I think we're all saying that we liked it, so we're all saying that the Force is with it.
The Force is definitely with this movie. The Force of God, even.
God coming out of his box to shame mankind.
Coming out of my box, and I'm killing the Nazis. Gotta get down so I don't kill the perv. Because indeed the perv.
So close.
Bex, you're my favorite person because Mr. Brightside is my favorite thing.
I will start off our plugs by mentioning that on February 1st, Worlds Elsewhere is presenting a production of George Bernard Shaw's Pygmalion, directed by yours truly and AD'd by River. Come see us say fuck your society and gender roles.
Woo woo! Break a leg, everyone.
Hi, I'm River. Hopefully you aren't sick of me. I can be found on BlueSky at Dreams Rebel, on Letterboxd at punk_skeleton, and on my own blog, blog.filmlion.online, where I'm doing the Great MCU Rewatch as I try to sort out my feelings about the MCU. You can also find me as the host of The Straights Aren't All Right, a podcast where I gather a bunch of queers together, make them watch straight rom-coms, and try to answer the question, are the straights, like, okay? By the way, for the sake of argument, are the straights okay in this movie? No, but with an asterisk.
No.
Too much toxic masculinity.
For me, if you like ballet, specifically contemporary ballet, Complexion's contemporary ballet is touring around the country, and you should go see them.
I don't have any specific plugs. I am really bad at social media other than my Tumblr, so I'm not gonna, give you links or anything, but figure out a way, leave a comment or something on the podcast. If you want to contact me, I do freelance editing.
And in the spirit of Star Wars, to be there for the people who need us, this episode's Mutual Fund Spotlight goes to James Bryant's fund for Black families impacted by the ongoing Southern California wildfires, especially the Eaton Fire ravaging Pasadena and Altadena. The GoFundMe link can be found in the description for this podcast, as well as on my various socials under my new handle, Demisem. Our theme music is provided by Refractory Period, the two girls, one beat synth pop sensation. You can follow them on Instagram at Refractory Period, the band. To further support this podcast, please subscribe to us on your platform of choice, leave reviews, and share with your friends to boost our visibility, and consider joining our Patreon. And now, it's time to turn to the Chance Cube to decide where our journey takes us next.
What is it?
That is a 6.
It is a 6, which means for our Black History Month episode, we're doing The Watermelon Woman.
Ooh,
What
funky.
is that?
Hell yeah.
If you want to know what that is, you'll just have to tune in next time. Until then, stay safe, stay strong, stay beautiful, and may the Force be with you.